Hello and welcome to Tweety Pies by Sylvester. Today I'm going to show you how to make some absolutely delicious shortbread biscuits without needing to use a rolling pin. So these are the shortbread biscuits I intend making. What nicer than a nice cup of tea and one, two or perhaps three, but maybe too much, shortbread biscuits. So today we're going to make shortbread biscuits, and this is an amazing recipe that I got from a lady from New Zealand who I was staying with in Australia, and she made these for me as a welcome gift. They were absolutely amazing. I couldn't wait to get the recipe, and now I'm sharing it with you. So we're starting off with 8 ounces of butter. This is basically just a pack of butter. Don't cut bits off, just put it all in. 4 ounces of icing sugar. We're using icing sugar so that it makes the mixture very, very smooth. There's no crunchy bits in it. And then we have 10 ounces of plain flour, 2 ounces of corn flour, and then half a teaspoon of baking powder and a pinch of salt. You do need a little bit of salt because the salt helps the baking powder to work better. Now, if you're not very comfortable using ounces, then I've written it out for you in grams, although I haven't actually done it in grams, but it should work. So with shortbread biscuits with 225 grams of butter, 110 grams of icing sugar, 280 grams of plain flour, 55 grams of corn flour, and then a teaspoon of baking powder and salt the same. So I've started off by putting my butter in a pan. I do actually just tend to zap it for 20 seconds in the microwave so that it really is quite soft. If you live in a hot country, then actually that's not a problem because usually butter's quite soft. But I'm speaking to you from Scotland, where it's actually pretty cold at the moment, so it's usually quite cold. Now I'm going to use a mixer to begin with, just because it makes it a little bit easier, because what I do is I need to mix my icing sugar, which is just going in there, with my butter, just to get it nice and light and fluffy. I'm just doing it on a gentle speed to begin with. Now, if you put it in the microwave and you've melted it too much, don't worry about it too much. Do this stage now, where you're actually mixing it. But before you do anything else, what I would advise is that you actually put it back in the fridge for half an hour or an hour, so that it solidifies a little bit, and then start and mix it again. You don't need to throw it away, but it is better if it's back to more of a solid than a liquid. So have a go with that. So now I've creamed it with my mixer, so you can see it's a much lighter colour. And I'm going to add in here, I've got my flour, I've got my corn flour, and then I'm going to add to it also the salt and a little bit of baking powder. So here we've got the first half of the flour in, and it's sort of quite sticky. But actually it's not anything that I can really handle at the moment. So we're going to put in the other half of the flour, and then I'm going to give it a mix and see what happens. Now it does go sort of a little crumbly, but don't worry, just keep mixing, just keep folding, just keep mixing, and all the flour will soon be folded into the butter mixture. Now once you get your mixture sort of nice into a dough, what you need to do then is to get your cling film and lay quite a long length of cling film along your work surface here, because what we're going to do next is we're going to tip all the dough onto the cling film, and then we're going to wrap it round into a sausage, and then you're going to pat it into the shape that you want. When you've done that and you're quite happy with it, you're going to put it in the fridge for possibly overnight, but it needs to solidify so that you can cut it. So now what we've done is we've taken all the mixture out of the bowl here. We've used the blue spatula to scrape it so there's not much left. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to roll it up into the cling film. So then in the end what you're left with is this long. So now we've taken this out of the fridge, and as you can see, it's pretty hard. So the next thing we need to do, we need to make sure that you've got a greased tin that we're going to put in the oven. This is quite a heavy duty one. Doesn't matter if you don't have one, but I use the butter paper that I unwrapped the butter just to put a nice coating of oil on to stop it sticking to the pan. And then you need a nice thin knife, thin as in, you can see how thin the blade is there, because we want to slice through these just in little thin slices like this, very carefully, just going backwards and forwards. As you can see, and just slice it down very gently, like this, and keep on doing until you get to the end of the bar, like so. So the whole thing is just cut in fairly even slices, and then we're going to take them one at a time and we're going to place them on the baking tray. Now space them out a little bit because they are going to spread just a little bit, but it's you don't really want them sticking together. And if you've got some thicker ones, put the thicker ones around the outside, because that will heat up more quickly, and put the thinner ones. You can see I've got some thinner ones here, and I've put those in the middle. I think, as you can see, I've still got plenty left, so I'm going to have to get a second baking tray for this. Right, at this point you need to make sure your oven is on, and it needs to be a fairly cool oven, 150 degrees centigrade, and they're going to be in for about 30 minutes. But what we need to do now to stop them splitting or cracking is to prick them. I've got a super little device. I think it's actually a pickle picker. I picked it up at a store, but something that's fairly sharp at the end. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, a bit tricky with one hand, but you're just going to prick it all the way through, down to the bottom. They've softened up a little bit now, being in the air, so prick them all out. If you don't have a pricking thing like that, you could always use the end of the knife that you've just used, just to make little holes, as long as it's very sharp and isn't going to split it. Right, the final thing I've done, I've got the oven on, the final thing is that I'm going to just sprinkle them with sugar. Now this is golden caster sugar, just to give it a little bit of colour. So what we're going to do is just going to take a little bit, and we're just going to sprinkle it all over the top just before it goes into the oven. So that's them all sprinkled with sugar. I've made about 23 so far with this recipe. If I'd have cut them slightly thinner, I would have probably got 24. But they're well spaced out, they're covered with sugar. Sugar is totally optional, you don't have to put it on, but I would advise that you don't skip the pricking bit, because the last thing you want is your biscuits to break. So I'm going to put these in the oven now. I've got a fan oven, so it doesn't really matter which shelf I put them in, but they're better to be cooked cooler and for longer than, you don't want them to be raw in the middle and then burnt on the outside. So I'm going to put two lots, so one's going to go on the middle shelf and one's going to go on the bottom shelf, and we'll look again in 30 minutes and see what they look like. So here they are out of the oven. They've actually only had 25 minutes, and you can see that they've just got a nice light brown colour. So the next thing we need to do is we need to take them off very carefully with a spatula and to put them on a cooling rack and